Welcome back. Let's put the spotlight on the real estate companies. Now, yesterday, Motilal Oswal came out with a note where they say that Bengaluru's real estate market is on the cusp of very strong demand, which is driven by strong IT hiring, increasing count of global captives, salary increments, and best-in-class affordability, notwithstanding the floods that the city is currently going through. But they do believe that Bangalore is on the cusp of a strong rebound in demand. There is low inventory overhang, just 15 months, high affordability in Bengaluru, I guess, when you compare it to cities like Mumbai, and this will allow for gradual and consistent price hike. And Motilal Oswal prefers companies which derive 60 to 75% of their sales from Bengaluru market. They initiated coverage on Prestige, Brigade and Shobha with a buy rating, and on Brigade, they've set the target price at 720. We're now joined by the management of Brigade. Nirupa Shankar, the executive director of the company, is now with us. Good morning, Nirupa, and thanks so much for joining in. Good morning. How has demand been, right? Because currently we are in a bit of a tenuous macro environment. Inflation is hurting the pockets, interest rates are rising rapidly, and they're expected to continue to rise. In that context, any signs of a slowdown?
Yes, so thanks for the question. We've had a very good Q1. We did about 1.25 million in sales. And for this coming quarter, we've had a very robust Q2 as well. Without getting into the specifics of the numbers for Q2, I would like to say that, the demand is continuing. Yes, we've had the increase in the interest rates, and it is expected to increase marginally further. But we don't expect to see a massive impact on the demand for housing. I think you mentioned a few facts before from the Motilal Oswal report, and that continues. There is a lot of disposable income for the IT professionals in the city. They do want to continue buying larger homes in gated communities. They want ready-to-move-in apartments, and they want to go with reputed developers just because of all the variables that can happen if they don't go with a reputed brand.
And I'm sure we will not see a massive impact on real estate demand due to rising interest rates, but can we still see some sort of an impact, some moderation in demand from the peak levels? And if yes, what could it be?
Quite frankly, as I mentioned, we had a very healthy Q1, and Q2 is expected to be just as healthy, if not better.
Okay, Nirupa, good morning and thanks for joining us. This is Pavitra. So do you have any kind of target that you're working with for FY23, if you could help us for the full year?
So typically we're not allowed to give guidance, but typically what we always say is we do try to have a 20% year-on-year increase. That's the conservative estimate we give every year, because as a growing listed entity, that's the minimum we would like to target.
Okay, since we're talking about your sales, can you also take us through what's happening as far as the geographical picture goes, and what are the kind of trends that you're seeing play out? Since you don't want to take us through any kind of target, if you could just take us through that.
So generally what we're seeing in the market, so if I may just walk you through the various real estate asset classes. For retail, for instance, we are seeing better than pre-COVID numbers coming into the malls. The sales is almost 30% higher than pre-COVID. And of course, we're just getting into the festival season of Diwali and Dasara in October. So that's expected to be a bumper month in terms of sales. Theaters, family entertainment centers, they're all doing extremely well. The office tech parks are slowly regaining their occupancy. So while, of course, they were in single digits and some in early teens earlier this year, we've now reached about 30 to 40% occupancy in the office park. So people are coming back to the office. There is robust hiring, as mentioned earlier. So a lot of the IT professionals who do fuel the residential market in Bangalore are looking to spend their monies on larger apartments, good facilities. They want larger rooms in case they need to work from home. And that is the traction that we've been seeing. Ready to move in homes is always in higher demand. And what we've seen is even in the upcoming markets where, apartments can go up to 3,000, 4,000 square feet on the outskirts of the city, those are in high demand as well.
But Nirupa, you don't think that, these civic issues, for example, now the chaos which is caused by the current floods, and I understand that this year it's worse than it has been in previous years, and limited to a certain area, and most of the construction would be outside of that area, like you mentioned. But don't you think there could be a dampener for realizations or prices going forward?
You know, of course, Bangalore has seen these unprecedented rains, and it has disrupted life in a big way in East Bangalore, I would say, in Bengaluru, Vartur, that part of town. But I would say that, you know, it's a temporary phase, probably for the next 2 to 3 days, and the prior 3 to 4 days, work has been somewhat affected in terms of construction. Just in terms of access, you know, people can't get to those areas and can't come out. So if it's construction materials going to a particular construction site, it's difficult. Obviously, we've been hearing news of some apartments and homeowners being displaced because of the heavy rains. But thankfully, at least in our projects, you know, we have something called a monsoon mitigation matrix. So a large checklist to see that and ensure that no project is flooded because of these heavy rains, right? And while Bangalore typically sees this every monsoon, quite frankly, we face similar issues. This year has been worse than the previous years. But I think even as of today, there was a lot of news in the newspapers today about, you know, the chief minister talking about a master plan for East Bangalore and for new development areas, because it is required, you know, in terms of the kind of infrastructure. Every time there's a new micro market being created for the city, the urban infrastructure is very important. So there is a talk of a master plan being created and relooking at the drainage system. So I believe this is a temporary setback of a week or so. We're not expecting such heavy rainfalls in the coming days. So it's probably a setback of 1 week, but we're not expecting that to impact demand. Of course, this does raise some awareness in the customers. So when they do come to a project, I'm sure they would want to know what is the steps taken by a project or a developer to ensure that there is no flooding in case of heavy rains. So there are certain steps a lot of us take. As I mentioned, we have something called a monsoon mitigation matrix to ensure that, you know, the drainages are not blocked, whether internal or external. The drainages connecting from the project to the roads are not blocked. We have to have extra pumps in the sump tanks and in the basements to ensure that water can be removed from the basements in case there's waterlogging. So there are various things that developers can do to prevent waterlogging in their projects.
Very quickly, do you think real estate companies will be able to continue raising rates, prices? Or do you think, you know, we've hit the peak in terms of price increases?
See, quite frankly, if the input costs continue to rise, the margins of a lot of developers are not as high. So some of it will have to get passed on to the customer if the rising input costs continue at the way it's been doing. We've managed to increase prices by 5 to 8% in the previous quarter. And obviously, with the price increase, you have to be able to justify why you're doing that price increase, apart from the rising input costs. Also, the expectations of the customers will be that much more for a premium developer. So if you are going to charge a premium, then you have to be able to justify why your project or product commands that price.
All right. Just one final question before we let you go. What do you think about the, Mumbai market? We were speaking to Godrej Properties earlier. It's been the best August that we've seen in the past 10 years or so. Growth for August is up 20% year over year. Does this market interest you?
I mean, it's an interesting market, of course, for the whole country to watch and observe. But at the moment, our focus lies in Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. We want to continue to increase our market share and market presence in these markets. And quite frankly, they've been very strong and they've been serving us well. So we have large expansion plans for instance, Chennai and Bangalore. And of course, we're always on the lookout for additional parcels of land in Hyderabad as well.
All right, got that, Nirupa. We'll thank you on that note. Thank you very much for joining us and taking us through the outlook for Brigade Enterprises. They're saying the demand is looking solid in Bangalore, but they're not right now, at least, looking to venture into the Mumbai markets. By the way, speaking of the real estate sector, you have to take a look at what's happened over the past 1 month. The Nifty index is up around 1.4% in this time period. And in the same time period, you've seen the Nifty real estate index, which is up around 8%. A few of the stocks will come up for you, which have seen a big rally. So something like a Prestige is up over 12%. 12%. You've seen Brigade itself, the one that we'll be speaking to right now, up around 8.5%. DLF, Sobha, Godrej Properties, all of these have clocked in strong gains as well. So the entire space really is doing very well and has seen quite a rally. But with that, we're going to get into a short break now. Lots more market action coming up for you in just a bit.